Good afternoon and welcome to today's Industry Week webcast, Kickstarting Your Modern Maintenance Program, sponsored by Dude Solutions. My name is Jill Jusko and I'm Associate Content Director with Industry Week. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you are having audio difficulties or slides are not advancing, simply hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please press the Help button to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology allows you to resize the presentation by clicking the Maximize icon or by dragging the lower right corner to enlarge the window. And we welcome your questions during today's event. To submit your questions to today's presenters, simply type your question into the Q&A window on the left side of your screen and then hit the Submit button. We will be answering as many questions as possible during the Q&A. That will follow the main presentation, but please feel free to send in your questions at any time. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and it will be available on the Industry Week website within the next week for you to review, and you will be notified by email when that archive is available. On your console, the Dude Solutions logo is hot linked. If you'd like to visit their website during this webcast, you can click on the logo and a new window will open. This will not take you out of the webinar. With that, I'd now like to introduce today's speakers. We have joining us today Paul LaChance. He is Senior Manufacturing Advisor for Dude Solutions. Paul has spent his entire career devoted to optimizing maintenance teams by enabling data-driven decisions and actionable insights. He wrote his first CMMS system in 2004 and has since spent his professional career designing and directing CMMS and EAM systems. Paul is a regular speaker at national trade shows. He's been featured at IMTS, FabTech, and SMRP, as well as several industry magazines. He currently serves, again, as the Senior Manufacturing Advisor for Dude Solutions. And joining Paul today is Pete Walker. Pete is the Production Engineering Manager for Johnson Outdoors Marine Electronics Incorporated at the Humminbird brand Marine Electronics plant in Eufaula, Alabama. Pete has more than 35 years of experience in PC board manufacturing and electronics assembly, covering the automotive and consumer electronics industries. Paul and Pete, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jill. And thank everybody for joining us today. Kickstart Your Modern Maintenance Program. So as we start this today, I want you to start thinking if any of these descriptions sound like you. Do you really don't have any maintenance system, no organized system, maybe paper and whiteboards and things of that nature, but you're intimidated where to even begin, where to get started on a modern maintenance system. Maybe you are the second group here and you've got a CMMS system, a software solution. You've got one, but it never got off the ground and you certainly don't think you're getting the value that you paid or are paying for that solution. And the third bucket is you've got a CMMS solution. Maybe you are actually making some progress, but you want to kickstart that. You want to take that to the next level. So we're going to spend the day today talking about where you are in these different areas and how you can move to that next point. So our agenda, our goals is where are you stuck? What kind of a plan do you need to create? What are some common problems and solutions that a well-implemented CMMS system can deliver? And where is that return on investment? Where you can get that value? Where you can make savings or better profitability? Just a little bit about Dude Solutions as we get into this. You can see the data on that screen there. We were just celebrating our 20th anniversary. As you can see, we've got tons of clients. They're all in that work and assets, CMMS, work orders management world. So a tremendous amount of experience and exposure through these years. We have customers all around the country. We have customers really all around the world. And for our presentation today, I'll be featuring our Asset Essentials product. This is Dude Solutions' flagship EAM CMMS system. It's a full-featured system that has everything from inventory control, work orders management, preventive maintenance, asset management, mobile, and so forth. So we'll be using that to kind of feature some of the technology solutions that can benefit you today. So let's start off with, where are you stuck? This little image here, the spectrum. Now, I've been in this business for a long time. I've seen people on all ends of the spectrum, and it's not 2 points. This is a continuous spectrum. But there's that classic group that is in firefighting mode. There's just not enough hours in the day. You cannot keep up. You don't have enough people to get things done. You certainly aren't able to keep up with a healthy dose of preventive maintenance. On that other end of the spectrum, and I love the visual there because these people feel like they have conquered, they've won the game. If you're completely proactive and in control with your maintenance operations, things just run smoothly. Now this is a continuum, and your goal is to move from the firefighting mode to that proactive and in control. You may be at various points where you're at in this process, and you really have to think about, where are you stuck? Change management is tough. If you're in that spectrum of the firefighting mode, and you say, who wants change? Everybody's going to raise their hand. We don't want to be firefighting all the time. We don't want to be dealing with unexpected downtime and so forth. The tricky part is you add a little simple 2-letter word, who wants to change? And you don't get the buy-in. And that's where this presentation today, we're going to talk about some tips and tools that you can use to help people embrace this concept. Because at the end of the day, it's going to lead you closer to the person sitting on a chair at the beach. So, where are you stuck? And again, I want you to think about where you're at this. You have no system at all whatsoever. You have a spreadsheet or a simple homegrown system. You've got a system, but it's certainly not giving the value you expect. Or you have a system and you want to take it to the next level. So we've got Pete Walker. He's going to give us some real-life examples as we go through this presentation today. And now, Pete, you've got some. And where were you when you first got started with this?
Hey, thanks, Paul. Before Asset Essentials, we did not really use work orders. Now, by having the work order system in place, we're able to know what items are having problems, a true sense of our downtime. All of the timestamps and information is helping us learn from our process so that we can make it better with the information that we're getting from the system. Also, being able to handle work orders from our mobile devices helps us to be more efficient by not being tied to our desk and being able to get all the information no matter where we are.
I've been around Pete and heard some of his successes, but again, you at the very beginning you said you guys really didn't have any system at all when you first got started. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so that's a great example as we move through this continuum. So this is a continuous improvement process. It's ongoing. You're never fully there. And one of the most important messages that I like people to hear when they want to kickstart their modern maintenance program is you got to own where you're at. If you're firefighting all the time, admit it. Admit that you need to have change. You need to make things better and embrace that versus sort of fighting that. Owning it, acknowledging where you are is one of the first important steps to making continuous improvement steps. And we're going to use this model. We call it APM. It's just an abbreviation for assess, prioritize, plan, execute, and maintain. And it's a continuous circular process. So we're going to spend some time talking about how you can use that to kickstart that maintenance program. So a plan. First off, with your plan, it takes a team. And I boldface that because the team is probably broader than most people think. Goals, objectives, and pain points are key. You're going to throw them up on a whiteboard. And you need that feedback from a variety of different people, different groups, because they're going to be different. Management, they often drive, hey, we need to reduce our downtime, or we need to have lower safety issues, or we had an ISO audit that we almost didn't pass. Whatever the situation is, they're probably driving this. Operational management, financial, IT are probably driving it. Equally important is that your maintenance team are actively involved in the process of how we can improve this. Supervisors and technicians for two reasons. The technicians, there's nothing worse than forcing a software solution on a group of unsuspecting men and women and say, hey, here's your new shiny maintenance software. You're going to start using it today. Good luck. You want them involved and hear where their pain points are, what their goals and what their objectives are as part of this process. Dude Solutions, or is part of the team as well. We don't just provide software. We're there to help you guys organize your thoughts. And then beyond that, eventually implementing what those goals and objectives are going to be inside the software and making sure your team is trained so they can start seeing those successes. And the fourth group, which is not often considered, is, especially in this modern day, is possible participation by other groups. For example, if you're going to take on an IoT, an Internet of Things initiative, or you're going to need to interface with your ERP or purchasing system, there's going to need to be some technical expertise of those other systems. Again, Dude Solutions will help organize these people into what it takes to get the system off the ground. But it's important to include all of those voices in this process. Pete, did you have anything to add to this one?
Yes, Paul, just to back that up, it was so critical to have your whole team there, like Paul said, all the way down to the maintenance workers and the technicians on the floor.
Totally agree.
That's it.
So, the plan. Now we're going to work off that album image in that upper right-hand corner. Assess. Again, that's the goals, the objectives, the pain points. Write them down. Throw them on a whiteboard. This is done by person, by team, however you want to do it. Diversified team input that you will later consolidate and find those commonalities. And you have to take into different factors. You're going to be doing a corporate-wide rollout of a CMMS implementation. Is this for a single plan, et cetera? You want to take into account those nuances as well. You need to make sure those goals, objectives, and pain points are measurable. You can't say, well, my goal is to do better maintenance. You need to have more specifics. I want to reduce my number of safety issues. I want to pass my ISO audit with flying colors. I want to reduce downtime by 50%, or whatever they may be. It's harder to fix what you can't measure. From there, you move on to the prioritization. That's number 2 in that APM circle. You can't do it all at once. You have to make sure you break it up into achievable goals. Small wins foster change. This is a continuous improvement process. You're going to be right back at the beginning and can take on items 3, 4, and 5 in the list. You do not need to do all 25 up front. Pete, I know you had some comments about the buy-in from your team. How did that go for you guys?
Well, it was a real struggle to begin with getting all the people to understand what the overall goals and objectives were. So goals and objectives are very important so that everybody understands what the whole bottom line and the end result is supposed to be.
Great. So next is the plan. That's number 3, mapping it out. And again, that's taking all those notes and those whiteboards and all that information and really helping tidy it up into a true action plan. And again, Dude Solutions, our consulting services group, they're there to help you get these thoughts organized. And you want to have the team poke holes. Why can't it work? Once you have a solid foundation of what you're trying to do, that's where we really kick in on the software side, making sure, and that's the implementation execution, number 4 in that circle, where we have those services that are critical to match those needs and goals with the capabilities within the software. So if your goal is to reduce downtime, we want to make sure that the software is set up to really help us analyze where's the downtime coming from, and how can we do a better job with that. So if everything from setting up drop-down lists to workflow and notification, to take your goals and objectives in that plan and have the software reflect it. It's important that as a manufacturer, as a customer, user of the system, you don't just sit there and let them do that work. You want to participate. You're an administrator. Your power users of the system need to be involved in that. So they're doing it alongside. It's great so that down the road, when you need to make tweaks to the system yourself, you can do that. Pete, do you have anything to add to this concept?
No, I'm good, Paul. Thanks.
So then we're in maintain, number 5. This could be the longest of the phases. It's basically you're just using the software, and you're starting to see the progress as a result of this system that's been set up with all those goals and objectives in mind. You're starting to be able to measure those results, compare it with the original goals and plan. And then you notice it's a circle. You're right back to assess. And you may get back to assess and realize, you know what, items 4, 5, and 6 on the list, maybe they don't make as much sense as they did before. You may reprioritize some of those things. But you take it on, and then you just continue with that process. It's a continuous improvement process. All right, so let's get into some of the problems and solutions that a well-implemented CMMS system can solve. And I've been around this area for a long time. So downtime, I start with downtime. Downtime is a profit killer. It's unexpected downtime. So one of the first questions that you need to ask when say management is saying downtime is killing us, it's killing our profits. First thing you got to be able to answer the question of where is your downtime coming from? A well-implemented CMMS system, when those work orders are going in there, there's going to be very clear drop-down lists for problem codes, cause codes, the asset types, all the things we need to know so we can answer those root cause questions. Where is that downtime coming from? In this simple example here, lubrication or lack of lubrication is the highest percentage cause of downtime in this particular example. Well, that's probably where we need to focus first. Do we need better preventive maintenance? Is this a team training issue? Is it possibly engineering where that asset or those assets are not capable of staying lubricated? Whatever it may be, but you want to avoid those problems. So prevention of downtime, root cause analysis, and again, a well-implemented CMMS is going to do that. You know, Pete, as I'm going through these slides, if you've got an example, please just interrupt me and chime in, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
So stockouts is the next example. Stockouts, if you're not familiar with that phrase, is the concept that, well, we've all been there where you've got a production asset or some sort of a critical asset, it's humming along, and it's making your product, and you got a big production run coming, and bam, that asset goes down. Even worse, you go to fix it, and you don't have the part you need. That is a stockout. Even worse, the part is on back order with your primary vendor. Next thing you know, you're having an emergency shipped from someplace in Europe, and you went from having an hour of downtime to 36 hours of downtime. Those are profit killers. So you want to avoid stockouts. And at the end of the day, it comes down to your ability to plan and execute your inventory management processes. A well-implemented CMMS system is going to do that and show you, do you know the parts you need for those PMs, for those assets, for those corrective maintenance work orders? Do you have the right part at the right time and hopefully at the right price? And if you mess this up, you're likely going to contribute to your work order backlog. That's pushing you more in the firefighting mode. There are a variety of solutions. There are a variety of features in Asset Essentials that can help you with that. But it really comes down to making sure you've just got a good summary of all of the parts. Where are they stored? How many do you have on hand? Vendor information, where to order them from. Safety-related information, all that kind of stuff about those parts. If you're going to do PMs, you need to make sure that you know the parts you're going to need for those PMs. There's reports that you can print out that show you your part kits, the parts you're going to need. When you build those PMs, you can see it's highlighted in the bottom right there. When you build those preventive maintenance routines, not only can you specify the parts you're going to include, but you can specify is it going to be automatically dispatched or to use a part reservation process. Say you have a job plan, you're going to reserve those parts for a PM that will be done later in the week. Or maybe you need to do a just-in-time ordering process for those parts. Again, that's more typical in a job planning process. But you really have to get a good handle on the parts you're going to need and make sure they're available. You should always, whether it's with a mobile device or whether it's on your browser, you need to know how many you have on hand, and more importantly, what are you low on? On the left-hand side there, you can see right on our dashboard, it shows you what parts you're low on. You click on that number 3 there, and it's going to show you those parts. You can build a requisition from there. You're going to receive an email notification that says what you're low on, and you can look it up at any time with those parts, what's on hand, what are reserved, what's back ordered, and so forth. So the next problem solution is commonly referred to as the 80-20 rule. And again, this is 80% proactive maintenance and 20% reactive maintenance. The Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, SMRP, and I'm guessing we have several members, SMRP members on this call today. It's a wonderful organization if you're not familiar with it, and I strongly recommend you take a look. But they preach that you should have an 80-20 ratio, 20% firefighting reactive work orders, 80% preventive work orders. And that's considered, quote unquote, stable. To be world class, they want to see a 90-10. Those are the people sitting in the lawn chairs on the beach, not the firefighters. So really it comes down to, you've got limited time to do your preventive maintenance anyway, so you need to make sure you're coordinated with your production schedules. You got to lock that in. You got to get it right. Even when you are in reactive mode, when you're in firefighting mode, even if it's that 10-20%, you got to make sure you have the right people for the job, the right tools, the right parts. So the disciplines you learn to become more proactive will actually help you improve your reactive work order responses as well. Another concept is the concept of what's called pit stop maintenance, to pepper in preventive maintenance during reactive downtime, unexpected downtime, to avoid double downtime. So think of that asset that's down, and it's everybody's screaming. We got to get that asset back up. It's a corrective maintenance issue. The really cool thinking supervisor, number one, they're going to get the issue at hand under control, work that problem. That's the number one priority. But once that is in progress, you can pull up and see, are there any other preventive maintenance routines that you can sneak in while that other work is being done? You would have had to take that asset down later, probably, to do those PMs. See if you can get it done at the same time. Pit stop maintenance, kind of like NASCAR, and to avoid that later double downtime. And then finally, the concept to incorporate a more modern predictive strategy using the Internet of Things, IoT. So we'll go through some examples. IoT, the Internet of Things, and you can see in that little graphic there, the concept that your assets, your facilities have all kinds of sensor-related data that can be broadcast to basically tell you how the assets are feeling. If an asset's not feeling well, if it's having an issue, if it's an alarm status, it can broadcast and submit that information to the CMMS so it can create a work order. Or maybe the assets have runtime information, how many hours run, miles driven, widgets produced, those other metrics that can tell you that it's time to do some preventive maintenance. So an IoT-enabled CMMS system can really help push you in closer to that 80-20 phase. If you're interested in IoT, reach out to us. We've got a lot of other resources beyond this webinar to talk about that. But, so when you're working towards an 80-20 rule, one of the simplest things you can do is to put right on your dashboard a KPI, a key performance indicator, to show you where are you at with your ratio. This one here, I'm clearly only at 60%. I want to be at 80 in the green. And you may not be even close to thinking you can be at 80. You may need that to be at 20 is your target, or 40, a continuous improvement process. But set a goal, measure the results, and then try to improve from there. You should have visibility into your schedule of all your preventive maintenance. Show that to your production supervisor. This is a monthly view of upcoming PMs. A job planner tool. I know that's hard to read on that screen right there, but all those names at the top there, the green and the red and so forth, that's my team. And if they are not properly utilized, if they're overscheduled or underscheduled, I clearly can see that. And I can manipulate the work orders that they are on, move them around, swap them out for other people, take them off jobs entirely. I can fine-tune where they're at with this job scheduling tool so I can optimally employ my staff in a balanced way. And that'll help with burnout. That'll help you stay on schedule. Pit stop maintenance, the concept of avoiding the double downtime, that situation where there's an asset down for some sort of a firefighting work order, well, you can quickly pull up that asset. You can quickly look up, do I have any preventive maintenance work orders that I could sneak in? Sometimes it's simple filter change or lubrication or whatever it may be that you can sneak that in while the other work is going on, so you won't have to ask for that asset at another time. So it's easy to achieve that avoidance of double downtime or do that pit stop maintenance. Next one we'll talk about from a problem solution standpoint is compliance and validation. So things like ISO. ISO requires you have an automated CMMS system, but other things for like validation around FDA CFR 21 Part 11B or other regulatory agencies that you might have to adhere to, or even internal protocols that you have to follow within your organization. A well-implemented CMMS system is going to really help you in that process. For example, this is a compliance example, but if you have to prove, if you have to show audits of people who have edited work orders, who is edited, what data did they change, things of that nature. That's just automatic. That just happens while the system is being used. You can show the auditor by looking at these logs of what information has been edited. Or if you require things like, say, a digital signature, when a work order moves from a pending completed to a completed status, if you want to require a digital signature, we track all that. You can turn that on, you can track it, you can see who signed it, who was logged in that signed it, and so forth, so you can track that information. Safety. Safety goes hand in hand with maintenance operations. So a system of record for all safety programs, policies, documentation, so things like your job safety assessments, your lockout tagout procedures, your safety data sheets, your PP&E policies, really anything, weather policies, anything that is safety related can be associated with your PMs and so on. You can also track your OSHA 300 loggable incidents in the system and produce that report that has to be posted on the break wall. So safety programs, you can have any number of them. They can be categorized. They can be associated with PMs or work orders. You can even require that your team, when they have to read it and they have to sign off that they read those. Your incidents can be typed into the system, and then you can produce that report. So because it's a lot of the same people and they're touching on the same areas, tying in your safety initiatives, your EH&S, or just I should say the occupational safety and health issues with your CMMS is very possible. And finally, we'll talk about analytics. We use a system, we have a concept we call Dude Intelligence. I always used to use the phrase that your CMMS is a system of record for all things maintenance. All your work orders, all that history, it's all in there. System of record. I'm now using the phrase system of intelligence. There is so much amazing data there's so much data that can turn into amazing intelligence in Asset Essentials. So you can look at trends. You can look at what's going on relative to other departments or other plants possibly and other benchmarks. There's all kinds of amazing sources of data that go into maintenance operations. Concept of a data lake, that's just us software nerds calling it a data lake. It's just where all the data lives. And this is in the dude world. So upper left there, all of your IoT-related data from your assets and your facilities is going in there. Things like weather, vendor updates, market information, the experiences and the progress of your brother and sister plants, or possibly other customers where you have relative information where you can really use that information to identify, hey, my lathe it's approaching this red zone in terms of how it's performing from a maintenance standpoint. And I want it to be much more in that green zone, and it theoretically can be, because that's how my other lathes, either in this plant or my brother and sister plants, are behaving. So you can get excellent relative benchmarking with this type of intelligence. So it's just, again, these are just screenshots of various forms of our Dude Intelligence. At the end of the day, it's that work order data, it's that part data, it's that asset data that we have in the system. So the final section here is, why does this matter? And how can I get a return on this investment? At the end of the day, you're spending money for this solution. And that you need to get an ROI. You need to get a positive ROI. That thing needs to make you more profitable, save you expenses. And these systems really, really can. That person who's sitting in the lawn chair at the beach isn't just having an easier day. Their organization is more profitable. They are doing better as a result. So there's a variety of data that we have that can prove this. We did a study and determined that we have this group we call our PM AllStars. These were a group of customers that all had a minimum amount of preventive to corrective maintenance ratio. And the ones that were deemed AllStars have a 37% decrease in overall work order costs than the non-AllStars. Do the math on that. That's an amazing ROI in that alone. They have a 65% reduction in emergency work orders. Think how that can help the mental health of the staff in production and maintenance, not to mention emergency work orders are always more expensive than preventive maintenance work orders. Pete, I know you have some great examples of how this thing has helped you. You want to share some of them?
Yeah, I can. Asset Essentials really has allowed us to see our work orders and the issues immediately so that we can prioritize the work. It allows us to know exactly how many requests are out there put on a daily basis. It keeps everyone on one system and allows for accountability of people doing the work. We now have a common platform where we can all manage work orders and tasks that are coming up. Being able to see the work that is needed is helping the tech stay on course so the production issues do not get lost or forgotten. Then with the addition of the parts inventory handling, which is really great, this has made our transactions more efficient to the point where we do not get in the bind when we run out of part and there isn't a replacement. Our supervisors get an early notification when parts are getting low rather than when they're out of parts.
Have you seen, like downtime? Has it had a positive impact on things like that as well? That's one that was dear to my heart. Have you seen any positive things on that?
Our downtime has improved drastically, and it's not because you're having less problems, but because of the being able to organize and plan throughout Asset Essentials, the technicians and maintenance people are able to go work on the equipment as it is, and then we have plenty of time to do the necessary PMs.
That's great. That's awesome. So there are some other just industry stats here. Business on average spend 80% of their time reacting to maintenance issues that arise rather than preventing them. That's just a time sink right there. Companies can save between 12 and 18% using preventive maintenance over reactive maintenance. 12 to 18% off your maintenance budget. That's a significant ROI over the cost of what implementing that CMMS is. You're going to use less energy. You have a solid, properly implemented CMMS, especially around HVAC, you're going to use less energy. 15 to 20% is an industry stat that we use. Every dollar spent on preventive maintenance will save you $5 on other expenses. That's the classic Benjamin Franklin, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And after implementing a CMMS, the reliability of your equipment can improve by as much as 35 to 50%. Asset longevity better quality of products you're producing. Amazing return on investment with that type of information. Another way to look at this from an ROI standpoint, we call this our asset lifecycle analysis. And this is a really cool report that can help you identify those really well-performing assets from the ones that are struggling. In the example here, those highlighted assets, the air handler unit has a grade of a B. It's just like school, A to F. This one's got a grade of a B. And if you kind of train your eye along that row there, there's several factors. This asset was purchased in 2002, had about a 10-year expected life. It's old. That years left, it's more than 5 years longer than we thought this asset was going to be in place. But from an issue standpoint, a cost standpoint, it's doing rather well. The boiler unit has a grade of a D. And it's a newer asset. It has theoretically some expected life in it. So if we analyze those two assets, this first one is the air handler unit. This is the older one that got the better grade. Its cost trends, and that's just simply measuring over time, are the work orders getting more or less expensive? In this case here, costs have been going down. It's been getting less and less expensive to maintain. Its frequency of failure, the number of days between work orders, is rising. That's another very positive sign. Remember, this is an asset that's older. The newer asset, its costs are rising. Its frequency of failure is getting worse. This is a new asset. You would expect it to be doing better. So you look back at this, and if you don't have this type of analysis, and you're getting ready to do, and this is an HVAC-oriented one, but you're getting ready to do HVAC budget planning for next year, and you're thinking, you don't have this data, you're thinking, well, we've got that dinosaur air handler unit, we ought to think about replacing that. The reality is it's the boiler unit you need to look at. Do you have adequate preventive maintenance? Is it a contractor issue? Is it training for the team working on it? The air handler unit that's older, you need to pat the backs of the men and women who are maintaining that, or renew the contract for the contractor. They're doing a great job. So having this type of analysis can really show you where you can accurately spend your precious dollars, furthering that return on investment. Final ROI example, and this is really more geared to our more IoT, more predictive. If you're doing preventive maintenance on a production asset once a month, sort of like clockwork, every month we're changing the filters and whatever it may be, you're just doing it like regular clockwork. So every 4.5 weeks, once a month. So in this particular simple example, when we have to work on that asset, we got to take it down to do it. Downtime can usually be met. This is expected downtime, but there's still a lost dollar value in lost production. In this case here, we're saying $2,500. Most companies can measure when their critical assets are down. What is it costing you? $200 in parts, $200 in labor. You extend that over the course of the year, you're spending almost $35,000 to maintain this one asset. Sounds like a lot of money, but relative to downtime, you're way better off maintaining the asset. If you fast forward to a more modern Internet of Things, where that data is coming off those assets, telling you when you need to change those filters. So instead of having to do this every 4.5 weeks, once a month, maybe because of the usage of the asset, we only need to do it every 6 to 7 weeks. Again, the asset's telling us when it needs to be done. You still have to take the asset down. You still have that downtime. You still have parts and labor. But instead of 12 times a year, it's 8.6 times a year. The extended cost is $25K. We're saving almost $10,000 and still having a more than acceptable level of preventive maintenance. Now, I'd rather people do more PMs than not enough, but if you're going to do preventive maintenance, do it as intelligently as possible. An IoT-enabled CMMS solution like Asset Essentials can do that for you. So recap, conclusion. Again, where are you? Own it. Admit where you are. You need to do that. Part of the psychology of all this. Create a solid, continuous improvement plan. Use your partner to help you manage that process. And make sure when you're doing it, you're going to see that progress, start to measure those results, and start to see that ROI that you get. Pete, did you have any parting comments you wanted to make before we move on to Q&A?
Yeah. Talking about ROI real quickly, our productivity improvements and impact 1 year into having the system in place shows nearly a 45% improvement in work order response, downtime reduction, expedited parts ordering, and communication improvements. Just briefly saying, 1 year in from launching Asset Essentials, we definitely think that everyone has become familiar with it and feel that it's a great tool to have for our production issues. Also, the PMs, asset management, parts tracking has improved our productivity greatly, especially with parts. We were having to rush order parts when we went to use something and didn't have them in stock. Now the supervisors get the email, like I said before. But basically, now that everyone has been able to see the benefits of it, the percentage improvement has greatly increased to a level of 90 to 95% burn-in to buy-in.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, I'm at the end here. Pete, I want to thank you before we move on. I really appreciate that. If you could hang out, you might be able to chime in some of the Q&A. So with that, I'm going to move us to our question and answer phase, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Jill.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will move into some questions here. And the first one I have goes like this. I've wanted a CMMS system for years, but my boss can't get past the costs. Quote, it's too expensive. What advice do you have in that circumstance?
That is a really common one. And I noticed somebody, thank you, who put that up. By the way, there's a poll on the screen while we're answering these questions, if you could just take a moment to answer that poll question up there. Yeah, the question of cost. It's too expensive to get a CMMS system. I'm hoping those of you who listen in this webinar, you get the fact you got to move away from the cost conversation and move into the value conversation. If you have that supervisors, management won't come up with the money for a CMMS solution. First off, number one, let us help you with those ROI value propositions so you can see where this thing can, whatever the cost is, what it's going to save you will dwarf that 10 times, sometimes 100 times. Think about the stockouts and the unexpected downtimes and the dollars that get wasted as a result of that firefighting mode. A well-implemented CMMS system is going to give you all those benefits that we talked about today. So if you can't, you got to shift the conversation from what is this going to cost me to what is this going to save me, and then it becomes much more of a justification conversation as opposed to the cost conversation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Our next question goes like this, and I would encourage you, if you have questions out there, to please submit them. Our next question is, several members of my team are older and have been resistant to software in the past. I want the analysis, but how do I get my team to embrace tools like this?
Yeah, that is a common, I tell you, some of the worst, back in my early days when I was going on site at clients and training them, some of the least comfortable trainings I have ever done. There's one in particular I'll never forget. I walked in there and I showed up for training, and the team that I walked into was literally told that morning that they had to show up an hour later for mandatory new software training. They had no idea it was coming. None. That's the worst thing you can possibly do to a maintenance group. You need to include them in those goals and objectives. A, they're going to have valuable input. You need to know what their pain points are. And B, they're going to have buy-in in terms of the solution helping them. So the combination of those two things are going to make that process go much more smoothly. Don't force people into new software blindly. I mean, I understand it sometimes has to happen, but if you can avoid that and get that buy-in, it'll go so much smoother.
Okay, the questions keep rolling in, so I'm going to move right along. Our next question. Have you seen SMEs adopting CMMS in recent years?
I'm going to guess SME, subject matter expert. If the person who put that in has a different definition of SMEs, I mean, if it's subject matter experts, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're not going to find anybody with maintenance management expertise who is going to sit there and say you don't need a CMMS system. If that person has a different definition of SMEs, if they could put it in there. But yes, I mean, and there's a wide varieties of experts out there to help with implementation. I mean, Dude Solutions as a whole client success center, that's what we do to help get those things off the ground. If I've got that question wrong, if that person could clarify, please.
Hey, Paul, this is Jill. I think that SMEs might be small to medium-sized enterprises.
Oh, CMMS works. I don't care if you're a one maintenance person shop or you have hundreds of facilities around the world. If you're not automating your maintenance operations, it's irregardless of size. It's just a question of, are you serious about profitability and achieving some of these goals we talked about today.
Okay. You're not going to get time to rest because our next question goes like this. What are your thoughts on cloud-based systems versus internal server-based systems?
I'm a little biased on this, but I'm telling you it is the general reflection of the entire industry at this point. Cloud-based. I mean, the total cost of ownership versus managing your own servers and that data and the upgrades. I mean, every time you show up and you log in, it's the latest and greatest version. You're seeing continuous improvements to the software. We pace ours and we train people on it. You don't have to beef up your IT staff. Our servers are highly, highly secure. We fall under all the SOC regulations, SOC 1, 2, 3. So we go through regular audits on security. So the question of security is we're probably way more secure than your own environments in most cases. The concept of internal server-based CMMS, first off, you're not going to find many people that even do it anymore because it just doesn't make sense to do it that way. And the whole industry is probably 90-10 now, and it'll eventually be 100, except for highly regulated defense contract, those kind of industries.
Paul, can I add to this?
Yeah, go for
it. We chose the cloud-based as well. We had a long discussion about which way, because we use on-site servers as well, but this cloud-based system was really the way to go. We use mobile tablets within our Dude Solution Asset Essential program, and it's just expedited it. So I would go with cloud-based.
I totally agree. Thanks, Pete.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I have another question here, and it is, when implementing the CMMS, do you recommend on-site consultation help, or is it easy enough to do ourselves?
That's a great question, and we have a variety of implementation services, and it depends how it can work within your budget. I would say the majority of our customers, not the vast majority, but a large percentage of our customers will use just the online training, and that's with a real trainer. You're attending a live distance education training. Of course, there's online resources and the help desk. But even from a remote standpoint, we have implementation services that will sit there and listen and help you with what your implementation goals are. Now, that's going to be a bit more limiting than using the on-site services, where we go face-to-face and, we're looking at your whiteboards with you and we're looking you in the eye and that kind of stuff. So it just depends upon what your budget can handle, how quick of an ROI you want to get or how complicated your scenarios are. But when you get into those conversations, like eventually, hopefully you'll talk to somebody at Dude Solutions, explain your situation, discuss the budget side of these things. But we try to find a tailored solution for all spectrums there. I love the face-to-face stuff. If you can, just because it can be really effective. But if it's not within your budget constraints, it's really effective to use the virtual services. In all cases, you're working with real people, real humans, and that's critical versus watching video after video and then trying to figure it out yourself. We do have videos, but that's to complement the real people conversations that you're having.
I'd like to add some to that. We did a little bit of both, but we actually did the on-site transition because we already had a large amount of data in a spreadsheet format to transfer over, and getting the system set up the way we want. I had perfectly capable people doing the online, but with the mix between the maintenance and the other staff, getting it on site actually allowed us extra training as well.
Totally agree.
Okay, our next question is, how can using mobile devices help me with maintenance?
You know, the features that are available in the regular browser that on your computer at your desktop, and remember, you can access things from anywhere. Are many of those features are also available from your mobile device, your iPhones, your Android devices. Granted, you're dealing with smaller screens, so you're going to have some limitations, but the ability to make work orders, open and close work orders, look up parts, look at assets, look at emergency safety procedures, maps, anything like that is available from your mobile device. The neat thing about mobile devices is you can walk up and, say, scan a barcode and then enter meter readings or make a work order or look up the history of work for that asset. You can use the camera and those kind of capabilities. So I just think of my iPhone or my Android device as just a basic extension of the same technology I use in my regular browser.
We use mobile devices here as well. Not everybody, but the ones that have to move all over the plant. It really cuts down on the amount of time it takes to go back to your desk or your shop and enter the information and get the next work order. This allows you to take the work orders with you, and in times of trouble, if you have to actually troubleshoot, you can actually pull up your schematics and documentation as well.
Okay, thank you both. We are going to have to wrap up at this time. I would like to ask our audience, if you have not completed the feedback form that is on the lower toolbar, I would ask that you do that. Then I would like to thank our speakers today, Pete Walker and Paul LaChance, and our sponsor, Dude Solutions. And of course, we thank you, our audience, with being here today and having the tremendous number of great questions. We appreciate that. And as a final reminder, if you are registered as a group, we would ask that you please add the names and the emails of everyone that was in attendance on the exit survey. And with that, on behalf of Industry Week, have a great and productive remainder of your day.